Hi, today we are in Palo Alto in the branch metrics office. Hi Alex, who are you and what do you do?
So my name is Alex. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Branch. I can go into a lot of background about myself and
Sure.
where I was born, but so I'm local. I've really never left California. I grew up about an hour south of here in a place called Carmel. Beautiful town. It's my favorite vacation. I highly recommend making the trip at some point if you have never been. I've always wanted to be an engineer, and growing up just like a little ways away, I knew that the best place to be an engineer was in Silicon Valley. And so like I knew since I was probably 5 or 6 that I would, as soon as I came to college, move here and then never leave. My goal has been to slowly make my way towards the hills as far as I possibly can, and then die comfortably in bed in Portola Valley at a ripe old age at some point.
Okay.
So I'm like almost there, but not there yet. I've always been building things since like a very early age. Studied engineering, actually didn't study software engineering, focused on electrical engineering. I studied primarily device physics, so this whole software thing that we work on today is actually very different than my educational background, but I think engineering is an absolute requirement when it comes to building a company or really addressing any type of problem, in that they train you really to solve problems. So I studied that. I actually kind of fell in love with school in undergrad, and then I almost made education my career, and that I started a PhD in electrical engineering here at Stanford with the full intention to actually go into research and then be a professor. But through that process, kind of, saw a lot of friends working and doing really successful things in industry, and then had an offer to join a startup in Santa Clara right at the same time when I started that program, and said, why not? So I actually decided, why not just do the best of both worlds, get some education while trying to do the master's and PhD full time, and then work full time.
Mm-hmm.
So for about 2 years, I actually did 7 days a week, school and work nonstop, until I said I can't do this anymore. Got the master's and just decided to focus entirely on the startup. The startup was in Santa Clara. It was the goal, the reason I joined it was like an incredibly awesome promise that we were going to build up a manufacturing facility from scratch. They had really an idea for the technology, and we needed to figure out first how to build it and then manufacture it. And so I joined when there were about 20-ish people or so. The company grew to about 700. We raised $500 million at the time, and ultimately failed. It was a very sad story. The company's assets were sold to a Chinese conglomerate for the technology which I built. After that, I said, I want to build my own company now. I kind of blamed a lot of the folks that were in charge of product and some of the strategic decisions for the failure of this startup. And it's on my resume, you can see what it is, but I won't name names. I blamed a lot of the strategic decisions that were made on the reason that we failed. I know we could have been a lot more adequately prepared for the market changes that occurred. And so I said, I'm going to do it myself this time. I want to make those decisions. Mm-hmm. So I quit and said, my turn. I fall in love with software over the course of that startup. I built a bunch of different tools, completely self-taught, and just started writing apps. So I knew I wanted to get into mobile software. The promise that I could write a little piece of functionality and software and push it out to a distribution platform that potentially would touch billions of people and run on a really powerful computer in their pocket was more exciting than anything that I could possibly dream of. So I just started writing consumer apps. My first version was this wild idea that I had, and I won't go into details, but I realized quickly that it wasn't going to be as easy as I thought to build up a company. And so I applied to the business school at Stanford as a fallback plan, that if all else failed, I could never build a successful company whatsoever. At least I would get a piece of paper that would say like, I didn't just spend 3 years of my life doing nothing. So fortunately, that was a really good decision because it's where I met my co-founders for Branch, and the company Branch came out of that whole story. So I can go into a lot more detail about what Branch is and all that at some point, but that's a little bit of background on me.
The basic idea from Branch, then you collaborated within the Stanford University?
Yeah, so I met my classmates like very early on. It's a 2-year program. I came there basically because I heard school was very easy and I could work on my own stuff and like barely go to class and just like keep working. And then I'd still get the paper at the end, which was true. Although attendance seemed to be the biggest requirement for business school. Anyways, I met my classmates very early on. I recognized them as fellow engineers that were very entrepreneurial. They had actually applied for internships over the summer. I convinced them to leave those and join me to build this other wild app idea that I had, which was a new type of photo book. Like it was a new type of photo book that we would produce and sell via an app. We built that out over the first to second year, launched it officially at the beginning of our second year, saw actually quite a bit of success and operated that business all throughout our second year. We got it to be about $1 million a year in total revenue. And then after graduation, we entered an incubator as this printing app. And all of these companies in this incubator saw this tool that we had built that we had built primarily as a tool to give us a competitive edge in user acquisition. It was a linking tool. They saw it and they're like, I want to use that too. And I've never built a product in my life that people would see and say, I want to use it. So I knew there was something there. By the end of the incubator, we had actually sold all of the assets to the printing business and decided to focus on this linking tool explicitly because it was basically growing organically. People who would use it would tell their friends, et cetera, et cetera. The tool itself is really kind of a platform for app developers. It's a linking tool. And the core premise, just very simply, and I won't go into too much detail, but the core premise is like in the web, links are very standard. Every web page is filled with, let's just look at Amazon as an example. They have millions of products that you can buy. Each one of those products has a unique link. In the transition to apps, links disappeared. In that when you build an app, you say, here's a first screen, here's a second screen. Like it's a completely self-contained storyboard of functionality. You don't have that same sort of like linking mechanism. Whereas marketing and all sorts of features that were built, sharing as an example, like you can't share a page in an app. It just didn't make sense. You can share an app, but you can't share a page unless you can create links that allow you to do it. So we brought that linking concept and applied it to apps so that like individual products inside the Amazon app, for example, could have a link. It didn't necessarily even link to the website. So we wanted every page, every object, like news article, product, photo, video, etc., to have a link in an app just like they do on the web. And with that, it unlocks a whole mountain of really cool functionality and things for app developers. So that's the Branch platform. It's really a linking solution for app developers, and they use it for pretty much everything: marketing, advertising, building features, etc. Anything you can imagine. Basically, every link that points to an app should be a Branch link is the goal, because we do linking for apps much better than they ever could. So
what is interesting to me is, for me, the idea is very obvious. Of course, you should have something like this deep links on an app. Why was there nothing else out there?
Yeah, so the biggest thing that we introduced was primarily using these links as a method of user acquisition. So a lot of, I think there was a study published that around 20% of the top 200 apps had set up deep linking for their app, where we allowed developers to actually start using deep links when users didn't have the app. So let me describe a little bit of the difference here. So let's say that you already have Yelp installed. Somebody sends you a link to the Yelp website. Yelp had already set up deep linking where they can open up their app and show you that thing. That technology had been available since the first version of Android and iOS, the ability to open an app and load a specific page. The problem comes when it's a new app that you don't have installed. There was no way to say, I want you to install the Yelp app and then have this page open up afterwards. So to carry through that context and expectation through the install, just the technology does not exist outside of what we offer. And user acquisition and growth is like the most important thing when it comes to actually building a pure app business, because it's so hard. It's impossible to get your app discovered, and so everybody is so focused on growth and UA. So when you actually have the ability now to market your app or promote your app based on the content inside, you can drive much more, growth in terms of new users adopting it, as well as new users like activating, signing up, or buying something in the app. So a shift towards content when it comes to app promotion instead of promoting the app. Whereas when you look at the current state of app marketing, you still see people buying installs. You'll see like you're browsing your Facebook newsfeed and there's a ton of advertisements for apps. There's no advertisements for like articles or products or that type of thing when it comes to apps. So deep linking unlocks that. And we're now at the point where nobody wants a dumb app anymore. They want to watch a video, or they want to read an article, or buy a product, right? Something like that. So it's an absolutely required sort of transition in the mindset of building an app to set up all these links that point back to these products. So it's crazy that it wasn't more recognized, but I think the biggest problem was you couldn't use deep linking for user acquisition. Therefore, it wasn't solving a problem that everybody had. It was solving sort of a small edge case that was like a tier 1 type problem. So barely anybody adopted it. Now you can use it for everything, and now it solves everybody's problem. So I think that's the difference. We estimate that we now have about 10% of the total app, deep link eligible app market using Branch. Mm-hmm. The remaining 90% do not use anything else. They don't use another tool. They just haven't heard about us yet. Mm-hmm. So a lot of what we do is education. It's why should this be the top priority in your product roadmap for next quarter or even tomorrow? Why don't you add this today? And so a lot of that's our entire focus from a company and growth perspective is sort of this storytelling to convince all the rest of the 90% why it's the most important thing for them to use today.
So imagine I'm an app developer. Walk me through the process of getting ready to have my app deep linked.
Yeah, sure. The biggest challenge when it comes to setting up deep linking is that apps aren't structured to support it. So as an example, Apple designed Xcode as the platform where you build an app. Xcode has you lay out your app in a storyboard. And they even have you indicate an arrow that says, this is the entry point. Often developers will put a splash page as their entry point. And then they'll have let's just say it's a very simple app. You have your splash page, login screen, and then you have list of products. And then maybe there's a product detail page. So you have a single entry point, which is the splash page. The next entry point is the login page, you get somebody to log in, and then they can see your products. So there's no way to actually, in Xcode, structure your app to say, well, a user could click a link and then enter the product detail page. So often, if you try to open up the product detail page before you go to the splash page or even the product list page, the app will crash. It's just the way that people have been building apps since, mobile apps were actually a thing that you could build. And so what's required is to say, forget about all that stuff that you've learned about how to build an app. There isn't a single point of entry. A user can be dropped in at every single point in that storyboard flow. So you as the developer need to say, okay, drop in Branch. Branch will tell you right when the app first opens up what the user is expecting to see, what link they just clicked, what page should you load now that you know that information. So we say, developer, let's say it's a list of shoes you can buy. The user just clicked on the pair of red shoes with this ID, load the product detail page for the red shoes, and then the developer say, okay, awesome, I'll do that. and they'll bypass and make sure that everything's all set up so that when the user sees that red shoes, they can click buy or done and go back to the product listing. So it's basically re-architecting the traditional like structure of an app to support multiple entry points. That's the bulk of the work. Like adding branch is actually like one line of code. It's super, super simple to add us. It's just like changing the mindset of the developer to say it's more complicated than a single point of entry. You now need to support, multiple entries. And fortunately, the story is very compelling. Like we've shown that if you go through that process, you can see up to a 2x conversion rate to buy that pair of red shoes. You can see on average across our network of thousands of apps that use us now, I think it's like if a user gets a deep linked experience as their first experience to the app, they're twice as likely to stick around after 30 days. So 30-day retention doubles if you offer them a deep linked experience, because it's so compelling that they're likely to keep using it again and again. So it's a good story. So like the one day in terms of actually restructuring the app is like totally worth it.
I totally get the point that shareability is key, and also that we have multiple entry points. And I see another parallel. So when the internet was first born and you had the first search engines, and then you had Yahoo structured search with, 1,000 links or so. If I'm looking now at the apps, I maybe have downloaded 20, 30, 40 apps. I can't download a million of them to look for them. But maybe there are some apps which include some interesting content, which is helpful to me. And I would like to find them.
Exactly.
But currently, if not every app is indexed in those kind of deep links, how should I find them? I would need to install all of them. And this is, I believe, the pain that you are trying to solve.
So, our core mission when it comes to building, so we give this tool away for free. We believe that the world that will exist on top of the technology that we've created and give to everybody is something that will benefit users and developers so much more, and will create an opportunity for us to monetize far more than we could if we were to try to charge some sort of service fee. Right. So the core problem that we faced as an app developer, and I still consider myself an app developer. Like I built an app for my fiance for Christmas where I aggregated all of the hikes in the Bay Area and then indexed them by keywords. So like Sunday morning, if we're like, hey, let's go on a hike, we can go, say we want to see flowers in a field and an ocean view, and then it'll tell us exactly which hike we should go on. I didn't publish it. I didn't publish it because I know that publishing to the App Store is a completely fruitless effort. Like there is absolutely no point to pushing an app out into the wild now because discovery is impossible. You'll never be found in an app store because there's so many other apps on top of you that have already locked up every single keyword that you'll never be found. The only other alternative today is to go to Facebook and then give them a massive amount of money and say, I want users. It's so bad that, and Facebook has monopolized the single control point to deliver users to an app that they now are charging $5.50 on average for an install. There is no world where a $5.50 cost of a customer will ever make sense. That means that LTV for a user has to be more than $5.50, which is crazy. We were selling things with our e-commerce app and we could barely make $6 LTV, which means there's nothing left to pay ourselves. Anyways, it's like a house of cards, completely unsustainable. So the problem that we face, that we want to solve with what we do, is discovery. We want to fix app discovery. And the way that we can do it is with the data that developers give to us by using the tool. The data that they give to us are the links. They've created links to pages that were previously unlinkable. So if you think about an app like Dubsmash, they create a single link that points to every single video that's watchable in the app, and they give us all the accompanying metadata. It's basically like the equivalent of a web era crawler. So when when Google set out, and all the other companies that built search before them, set out. They had to write a page crawler that would crawl all of the text and figure out, like, when somebody types in a query to say, you know, looking for, let's say, their friend's video, even though video wasn't a big thing back in the early days of the web, but just say search for your friend's video, they would try to match that text to whatever page they'd previously scraped. We have indexed the Dubsmash app, where no crawler, no web crawler can actually get all of that information. The other really important piece of data is that we see how popular each individual video is. So we know at a video level how many times it's been watched, shared, clicked on, etc. So we can say that this video is actually more popular than another video. So when you're looking to find something entertaining on your phone, Branch has a single index of like everything that's actually, you know, watchable, let's say. Plus, we know exactly of the watchable things, what is the most popular and trending video today in the mobile ecosystem. So when it comes to showing you things that you haven't seen yet before, but definitely should, no other company can surface that information but us. So we're going to use this to build a app discovery engine where we don't promote apps, we promote the content that resides within them. Our goal is just to create an alternative discovery mechanism that allows people to find things that they're looking for and developers to connect with those users who are looking to interact with them. I just want to look back, let's just say in like 3 years, if we can say that thousands of developers, thousands of businesses were only successful because of the channel that we created, then we built a successful product. That's my goal. So I just don't want anyone to ever get into the situation where they poured years of their life trying to create a product and a business in mobile, but failed because they didn't have access to, something to deliver them users. Whereas in the web, you can actually invest in SEO and get a substantial number of users just through search queries on Google. And tons of businesses that have been built purely on that organic channel by pushing content that people actually want to find. We need to create that same mechanism for apps. So that's our core driving mission. How that looks will change, over time, but
what type of customer segments are you currently targeting? Because in the first phase you said the bigger apps, they have already deep links for themselves.
Yeah.
So therefore I would assume you would rather target the long tail apps.
When you think about, there's a difference, and this is often confused, but there's a difference between re-engagement and discovery. Discovery is finding something new that you have never seen before, finding a new business or a video or an app that you would have never found otherwise. Whereas, the head of the tail, the head of the market, you already have an interaction, you have some relationship with, you have Yelp installed on your phone. If you want to find a restaurant, you're going to go to Yelp. That's that's the restaurant finding app. So you don't need a tool to surface you restaurants that when you're looking for Thai food. What you don't have is something to push you things that you should see but have not yet seen. So when it comes to solving discovery, the mid-tier and the long tail is really where we can shine. We can say this particular video, maybe it's not in Dubsmash or one of the other 1,000 apps that also allow user-generated content. We can push you the thing that you should see that's very similar to the things that you've seen in the past but haven't yet seen. And so in that case, it's really around the long tail and the stuff that you would never find otherwise. We want to try to find these diamonds and just surface them. That's discovery. So when it comes to actually pushing new content, that'll be the type of thing that we focus on. However, people want to see the types of things that are being shared very frequently, across the head of the market. Fandango or Zappos, where you've heard of the brands. We can surface the things within those that you should see and also haven't seen yet too. So it's discovery within an existing brand and category, or something that you if you were going to buy shoes, you could go to Zappos directly, but we can tell you check these shoes out because everybody else loves them, type of a thing. So there's discovery you can do with those existing brands, but when it comes to locking up new things, it is the mid-tier and long tail that we want.
Good. Alex, if you look at Google, they have Google Analytics on desktop. And I believe they have also some kind of SDK on the mobile. What keeps them from going the same direction of deep linking?
I mean, they have a bunch of initiatives to try to index apps. They have this thing called the App Indexing Initiative, and the goal for them, like their product is search. So you type in a query and you will get a result. The goal for them is to take their existing index of web results and deliver the user to the app if they have it. Surfacing pure app content for them is actually not that great of a user experience. Like if you were to search for, let's stick with the Dub Smash example, and they surfaced Dub Smash and you did not have the app installed on your phone, they'd have to send you to an app store when you click on the link, which is, from a user experience perspective, just awful. Like, you clicked on a video, you got an app store. Nobody wants that. So their focus is, let's take all the stuff, the great stuff that we have on the web, and deliver a compelling search result in that. And if the app is installed, we'll send the user there. So app indexing is primarily a tool that allows the developer to focus on, to list what their web content indicate to Google that it is also a corresponding app page. But unfortunately, a lot of folks have not yet adopted deep linking. So, the subset of those app links is actually pretty small. But like for their use case, it doesn't make as much sense for you to interact with to index pure app content, because from a search user experience, it's pretty poor. So it's just not their, key focus. It's possible that some of the things they're doing around Google now could start to overlap when they actually want to recommend you apps that you haven't seen yet that you should, that are related to something you're doing on your phone. But so far they haven't, gone in that direction.
Cool. Alex, what type of advice could you give first-time entrepreneurs?
I have a lot of advice. It's incredibly hard to build a company, be it from the life-ending problems that you face from a day-to-day, just day-to-day, either product or customer related or financing related or whatever. Like, you're creating something from absolutely nothing, and everybody is trying to kill you and stop you from doing it. So it's tough. Advice-wise, the most important thing, I think, is really around attitude. So, and this is one of the reasons why I mentioned that engineering is a really important just degree to get, or to go through that process of like 4-year education at least, where you are just confronted with a continual onslaught of problems that you have no idea how to solve. It's like a problem set you'll get in electrical engineering. It's much more mathematical. It's like, here is a proof. You need to prove this one like low-level physics equation from base principles. I have no idea how to do it, but like, I'm gonna fail this homework if I don't figure it out. And like, the consequences are not as severe, but it's literally, all I can do is have the confidence that I can figure it out. And if I just like go and keep going and push in every possible direction, eventually I will get to the answer. So having the confidence to know that even when you face something that like you have absolutely no idea how to solve, you have no idea how to do, have the confidence to know that no matter what, if you work, your butt off and don't give up, you will get to the answer. So I think it's like a perseverance. I wrote an article, and I highly recommend reading around the concept. The title is called Just Keep Building. It's the first time you try something, it's going to fail miserably. It won't work at all. You won't have success. And the most important thing is to look at and analyze that failure, see what you did wrong, what assumptions you made that were incorrect, then take all of those learnings and then use that as the launch pad to build the next thing. It's the only way that you will actually succeed. There is not a single entrepreneur ever that has ever said, I have a great idea, and they turned it into $1 billion company. That does not happen. It's a fairy tale. It's like, just pick a direction, go as fast as you possibly can until you learn that it's not working. Learn everything that you can about how and why it failed. Pick a new direction based on those learnings and go. just the most important thing is to keep moving as fast as you possibly can, because the only thing that you have like fighting against you is time and money, which is equivalent to time. But like, you know, you can't keep doing that forever because you'll probably run out of food and, you know, rent. But so you just have to keep moving as fast as you possibly can. So like this execution and lack of fear of making a mistake is like absolutely the most important thing when it comes to building a company, because it just is, just be prepared for a lot of disappointment. But like use that disappointment, feed off of it to move on to the next thing, knowing full well that no matter what, at the very end you will find that answer. So I have a ton of advice on building company culture and, you know, fundraising and all that kind of stuff, but I think from a core, like, what's the single most important thing is that it's not about like, you know, networking, going to these social events, like doing this kind of stuff. Like it's about what you build and accomplish, and just keep doing that as fast as you possibly can. So
Alex would be very interested in your advice on corporate culture.
Culture is an interesting one in that it defines a lot of, like, we're now 45 people. It's still a very small company. It's very manageable. I know everybody. Like, I can interact with everybody. I know what everyone's doing. It's definitely not to the point where it's like, you know, out of control and that I actually don't have insight into what everyone's doing. But it's just on the border. And especially as I go into things where I can't be involved as much. Like, so as an example, like going through a fundraising process completely sucks me away from the company. I have absolutely no idea what's going on. I'm going from this meeting to that meeting. I'm dealing with things that are totally unrelated to the day-to-day operations. And you just have to have faith that every individual person has enough, you know, competency and like internal guidance to make their own decisions and make sure that they keep going in the direction that you hope they will. So the only way to accomplish that is with culture. And so you can set like, you know, a high level goal of this is where we're going to go, but everybody needs to be able to make the same sort of decisions on their own, and not just like, you know, if they face a problem, just sit back and hope that it will, you know, get addressed. So what I've found to be the most effective, and I stole this actually entirely from our previous startup, it's sort of an emphasis on individual accomplishment. How do you make sure that everybody knows that they are only successful if they personally achieve, like, you know, whatever project that they're working on, just achieve success in whatever project they're working on. We do it in a way where we'll try to shine light on individuals. So we actually have every 2 weeks a review where every department head who's like responsible for marketing, sales, etc., will get up and actually present individual numbers reporting on people's projects. So in the sales is very easy. So like we show at an individual level, so there's literally on, you know, the projector, everybody's name indicating their success over the last 2 weeks. So people can see like, oh yeah, awesome job, you know, Austin or whoever it is on the team is like, you really killed it last week. And that person is recognized at an individual level. Same thing goes with marketing, same thing goes with engineering and support, like all the various aspects of the business. Everyone is recognized at an individual level. At the same time, the person who's like not doing so awesome is also like presented right in front of the whole company. So it's driving them to have like a sense of like individual accomplishment. We're not like a family. We're a team of like rock star players where everybody should feel lucky to be on the team with the other folks. Like they should look across the table from them and be like, man, I'm so lucky to work with that person. And if they don't feel like that, they don't belong here. So it's just a focus on the individual. And what that does is when that individual is faced with a question or a problem or whatever, they know that their own personal success relies on them being able to push past it. And there's nothing more motivating than like personal achievement. So I think an emphasis on the individual is absolutely important. So we have very relaxed management. There's very little oversight in general. Everybody's just running as fast as they possibly can. Everybody knows they live and die by their own work. I tell every person that I talk to when they started the company is, I want you to look back 10 years from now at your resume coming out of branch and say, I did the best work of my life at that company. If they don't feel like they actually are going to be able to achieve that, then they're not going to be successful here and they should leave. So, but if they can, if they, are focused on improving themselves, driving to be the best that they possibly can, they will for sure be able to do that. So that's my, I think that's one of the most important things. We're not I forbid ping pong tables. I have people say it's a no fun policy. I don't want people to feel like this is a comfortable place to come in and relax. This is a place where you come to get shit done, to accomplish things that you would never have a chance to accomplish in any other role. And it's not a place you're going to come and kick back on the couch and hang out with friends. You can do that outside of work. So when you walk down the halls here, everybody is super heads down. It's very, very quiet. Everybody's working as hard as they can. It's just an unbelievable feeling when you're a part of it. It's really cool. So
I totally get the point that you are trying to align the company success with the individual success of the people. And for the people that are in the, let's say, top 30 percentile or so, yeah, totally get it. Do you perceive sometimes that the maybe bottom 10 or 20% are feeling bad just because they are visibly shown as being not as good as the others?
But the best part about that is that there's no motivator like the feeling of inadequacy. And there's a couple responses to that feeling of inadequacy. It's either I'm going to kill myself and improve myself and make sure that 100% I can succeed here and I will do better, or you leave. And both of those are great outcomes for us, because we don't really want somebody that, to be perfectly honest and frank, sucks on the team, because no one else is going to feel lucky to work with them. I was a part of a group for a long time, the R&D group, and I'll try to just describe it as nebulously as possible, where I was an individual contributor, and there were a couple other individual contributors on my team, one of which I felt did not do any work. They contributed from an ideas perspective, but the ideas I felt were actually toxic and detrimental to the overall productivity of the team. I asked in every single one-on-one that my manager fire this person, because it was bringing me down. There's nothing more demotivating than being on a team with somebody that you feel is not contributing. You're constantly thinking about it. You're we're literally wasting company dollars paying some jackass, to be, sit around and spout off nonsense ideas. It's super unproductive. And so I actually ultimately left a lot because of that. I just didn't want to be a part of it. And I don't want anyone here to ever feel that same way. I want to make sure that everybody feels like they're lucky to work with everybody else. Otherwise, that person shouldn't be on our team. Because we need to accomplish incredible things and move with speeds that very few companies have been able to, and execute across a couple different strategies that have us, excelling in many different areas. If we can't move very effectively, if there's somebody dragging us down and lagging the team, then we won't succeed. So it's super, super important that everybody is high performing. So
Alex, how do you then balance the individual contribution with the group contribution? Imagine you have a sales department, and on the one hand, maybe I will be focused only on getting more sales for me, and getting maybe in something like a competitive environment, which is maybe in the end not maximizing the target metric, which is potential sales whatsoever. Whereas maybe I will have more individual contribution in sales, but maybe I will give more referrals or some other kind of value advice to the other salespeople, and thereby contributing.
Yeah. So the important thing there is just to make sure that your metrics don't create that sort of divisive organization. So in the sales example, we actually reward assists. So there's the ability for people to earn. There's actually a guy that all he does is just assist, and he's still like one of the top performers and everybody recognizes that he's an essential part of the team and like really, really valuable. He's not closing, but it's just because we've created the metrics that actually allow somebody like that to be successful.
It's like in basketball. You have some assists, some blocks, some
exactly.
rebounds.
Exactly. And then same thing with marketing. Like our blog is, we have a very large emphasis on content. There's a lot of people contributing to the blog. There's a person that manages sort of the overall publishing aspect of it, and he kind of sees it as his domain to report on performance and drive, promotions and all that kind of stuff. But people contribute individual articles. And because you contribute an individual article, when that article does well, the blog guy will promote it. He'll see a lot of success through a lot of the work that he does in promotion. The person who wrote the article sees a lot of success because they get their own personal brand. We don't ever say anything that this is written by Branch. It's written by an individual. So we just try to make sure that even though ultimately the company is benefiting greatly from all of this, that the individuals are rewarded appropriately depending on the work that they do. So yeah, you just have to think, you just be careful that you don't create those sort of divisive cultures, because I have seen them sort of tear companies apart, especially sales is one of the most dangerous ones. But yeah, just be careful.
Alex, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, of course.
And I wish you so much luck with your startup.
Yeah, it's going to be a wild ride.
That's awesome.